All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of A Little Bit of Everything. Uh, it is Saturday afternoon, and I hope everyone is enjoying their weekend so far. I most certainly am. And especially after yesterday, um, it just so far is going very, very awesome. And what happened yesterday in particular is while I was working, moving dirt around on my lot, uh, the foundation guys were there working. And over the past 2 days, we've had several dump trucks come and dump loads of fill dirt to be put within the stem walls and get compacted. And then after the fill dirt gets compacted, there's another type of compactable material that is simply called AB that gets put on top of that. And um, so the dump truck driver um, who made most of these runs, uh, after his last one, he gets out of his truck and he walks up to me and he's like, this is yours, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I've watched you out here, working here alongside these guys. And it's like, you obviously don't have a job because you're here and you're paying for this. I'm like, yeah. He's like, what do you do for money? And I just started to giggle. He's like, obviously, you're not working somewhere else because you're here. And looking at your car, I can tell that you know something about the internet. I'm like, yeah. He's like, so what is it that you do? And hang on. Uh, sorry about that. Um, so he asked me, he's like, what is it that you do? And I told him that what is represented on my car are different logos for different digital assets that I'm invested in. And I told him that my investments have come through very well for me. And that's how uh, I'm paying for all this. And he proceeds to tell me about how he has been wanting to do something to build some kind of nest egg because he doesn't want to drive a dump truck for the rest of his life. And he was telling me about his attempts with running an Amazon store and other courses that he's taken online to try and learn things to try to build some kind of extra income. And I just smiled and I said, well, uh, I can sit down with you and tell you what I did to pay for everything you see here. And you don't have to pay for any courses. You don't have to subscribe to any services. Um, like literally, it's just you and the code. All you have to do is figure out the math of what you need to do to get what it is that you want. And I'll sit down with you and walk you through everything. You just have to push the right buttons and do the right equations. And you just fill in the blanks and it's just you and the code. And the math works the same way for everybody. So what I'm talking about here is not a pyramid scheme. And this guy just lit up. I mean, he was so excited. I mean, during the course of our conversation, he must have shook my hand like 5 times. And I just felt really good talking to this guy because he's just somebody that I know if I sit down with this guy and show him what we have, it's gonna click just like that. I told him a little bit. I told him if you go to hex.com, that's the website for the main asset, you can do some homework in the meantime before we sit down. And I told him probably the most complicated part of getting involved with what I do is you're going to have to set up an account with an exchange, and you need to be willing to give that exchange permission to access a bank account. And he's like, what, like Zelle? I'm like, yes, exactly, just like Zelle. He's like, yeah, that's nothing. I'm like, okay, then you're not going to have any challenge with this. So it really just made my day to witness somebody respond to me the way that he did after asking me about, what all that stuff on my car is. Because most of the time when people ask me and I tell them, they just kind of look at me like I'm speaking a foreign language, or it's like, oh, they're like suddenly regretting that they asked me. But so that was a really big highlight for me yesterday. I mean, it's like this picture was coming to me of what I could show him in the simplest way to expose him to the most options that he would have at his disposal. And the fact of the matter is, we've come a long way in this space in the last couple years since Hex launched. I mean, just, you know, as far as getting into the system, making use of the system, uh, withdrawing uh, value from the system, it's like these things have been made so much more simpler than they were in the past. And I'm really excited about being able to show this man these things. Um, he said that probably Sunday after dinner would be the most ideal. He does work full time. So I'm hoping, you know, that's what comes together tomorrow evening with him. So before I get into anything else, Danny Boy dropped in and said, yes, I caught Timmy B live. Yes, you have. Welcome to the show, Danny Boy. Thank you for stopping in. It's good to see you. I'm glad when people are happy to have me around. That's not always the case. And I had another incident that I talked about on Thursday that kind of involves this because let's just say uh, there are people out there who have difficulty engaging in what I call adult conversation. And it's usually because a person has regrets or unresolved guilt in their life, or they're offended at something and are unwilling to take an honest look at why they're in this state of offense. And I had to explain this to someone in my family recently who had some questions about the behavior of somebody else in our family. And fortunately, this person understood where I was coming from because the person of discussion was someone who was a mutual relative of both of us. So that really weighed on me much of the day Friday. As a matter of fact, I didn't stream yesterday, and this incident was part of that. Another part of it was that when I was about to set up a stream, I just realized that Crypto Cabana was going to do, he was about to launch his stream that day, and I didn't want to be on at the same time as him. And then later, RG3 did his Friday night hangout, and I didn't want to be on at the same time as him either. So those three factors together, I just felt like I needed some time of personal introspection, because the fact of the matter is the things that I'm going to be talking about on my streams very much are under the heading of adult conversation. You know, a lot of people when they stream, it's not everybody's has the same objective. Not everybody has the same life's experiences. So not everybody has the same maturity either. And I realize that uh, this is one of the reasons that I'm not really going out of my way to try and get an audience, because it's inevitable that I'm going to be talking about subject matter that people are not going to not just disagree with, but may very likely take offense to. Because the truth has a way of destroying everything false. And when people invest their lives, certain life's decisions, on a narrative that is false, and they're confronted with the truth, they tend to become proud. And pride is a obstacle that prevents people from accepting what is true. And I'm going to be getting into these things in the future, particularly on Saturdays. And like I said in my stream last Saturday, Saturday is not just another day of the week to me as far as how I relate to life. And because of that, my streams on Saturdays are going to be of a different nature altogether. I'm not going to be talking about crypto. I'm not going to be talking about price charts. I'm not going to be talking about the hexagon of the day. And like if I talk about a book, it's not going to be of a worldly nature. Before I get into any of that any further, I do want to recognize some people in chat. Facing reality, let's go. Hope everything is going to plan with your property. Yes, it is. Everything is moving along just fine. I don't know why this person doesn't get the message, but I'm not available to talk to them right now. So anyway, he says lock shields. Yeah, pretty much. Mobius says, hello all. Hello, Mobius. Thank you for stopping in. I don't know how much of this stream you've caught so far, but as I was saying just prior to referring to people in chat about a minute or two ago, that when I stream on Saturday, it's going to be of a different nature than the things that I would normally talk about on the other days of the week. And that is because the central focus of my streams is something, I haven't mentioned it in several days, but it's something that I call the successful society. And, you know, successful society, meaning how we as individuals connect with one another, how we communicate with one another, how we regard one another, how we resolve disagreements among one another. These are the things that define a successful society. And as I've said, you don't have to go very far to see what an example of an unsuccessful society looks like. It's like just turn on the TV or even go on Twitter. I mean, it's like it's everywhere. So one of the things that is the reason for my streams on Saturday being so different is because Saturday is what is known as the Sabbath day, according to the Bible, according to the Ten Commandments. And because of who I am in relationship to that, that affects how I function on Saturday. And I want to share with you a statement in relationship to this that puts into perspective why I am approaching this subject as I do. This is a statement from a prophet that went by the name of Isaiah. And he says, if you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, the holy of the Lord, honorable, and shall honor him, not doing your own ways, not finding your own pleasure, nor speaking your own words, then you shall delight yourself in the Lord, and I will cause you to ride upon the high places of the earth, and feed you with the heritage of Jacob your father, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken it. And really, this double promise that is brought out in this statement that is intended for people who respect the Sabbath is a blessing that I would like to be instrumental in extending to other people. And that's why I'm adjusting the content of my streams on Saturday, because it is the Sabbath day. And I want people who watch this stream on the Sabbath day to receive the blessings that come from respecting the Sabbath day. So this is why I'm doing this. I'm not doing this because I'm some Bible thumper with a religious agenda. To be honest with you all, um, I've been around. I've been around in churches for most of my life, except for a 10-year window between like 1983 and 1993 when I was a teenager. That's probably the only time of my life when I was not involved in some kind of church environment of one or another. And one of the conclusions that I've drawn from all of this is the fact that most of what is regarded as Christianity by the rest of the world is really nothing more than people simping for Jesus. And I'm not that kind of person. And I never wanted to be that kind of person. So when our family stopped going to church when I was 13 years old, that was their call, not mine. I didn't have any reservations about that. As a matter of fact, when I started to get older and was interested in returning to that environment, I was kind of reluctant because I didn't want to bear this stigma of being a simp, because that's just not the type of person that I am. Uh, I live and operate according to principle, not sentiment. So that's part of why I'm approaching all this from the perspective that I am. And, you know, it's kind of interesting. When I was a little boy and our family did go to church on a regular basis, um, I really didn't get what any of it was about. And as a result, uh, on my own, I just prayed one day and asked God to make it all clear to me because it wasn't. And around that time, I had grown to a place where I was given a Bible when I was like 8 years old. And I read part of it. Mainly, what I did is when I got it, I noticed there were maps in the front cover. So I looked at the maps in the book and I looked at the map on the wall and I saw they matched. And I'm like, okay, at least this book is geographically consistent. So from there, what I did is I looked in the index and I looked up the names of some of these countries that were listed on the map. And I read different passages that mentioned these countries, and most of the time it was not very it wasn't very edifying what the book was saying about these different countries. Um, so, like I said, it really didn't gel with me as like, what is the point of all of this? And that was what prompted me to pray and ask God to make it clear to me because I didn't know. And I didn't really think to ask any people, and even my parents. I just didn't think that they really knew themselves. Just observing my parents, you know, their behavior and stuff, they just didn't come across as really having the answers I was looking for. So, I mean, even though I got along great with my parents, everything was fine in that regard, but I just didn't sense that they really knew all the facts of the matter. So, um, sometime after that, probably about maybe a year later, because it's not like, okay, I prayed and some great spectacular thing happened. No, nothing recognizable happened that I was capable of recognizing at that time. Looking back over the course of my life, I can see that an answer was actually given. I didn't have the character to recognize it at the time. I had to grow into that. I had to acquire knowledge to arrive at that point. So the next major thing that happened after that was, like I said, it was about a year later. I was in third grade, excuse me, and we were learning about dinosaurs and cavemen in third grade. And I was fascinated with the subject, especially when we started talking about cavemen. And I remember one day I went up to talk to the teacher privately at her desk. And I said, I want to know when the first humans existed, because I didn't know. So I asked my teacher, and her response to me was, well, if you want to know that, you're going to want to go to college and become an anthropologist. I had no idea what college was in third grade. I had less idea of what an anthropologist was either. I was just dumbfounded by her answer. I just was like, okay, and went back to my desk and then just kind of sat there and looked out the window like the rest of the time because it's like I experienced an awakening that showed me that grown-ups do not have all the answers to everything. I mean, I kind of got that a little bit from my parents, but I expected my school teachers to know everything. I mean, literally. I mean, that was my just natural assumption about life. And suddenly it's like, no, that's not how it is. And it left me wondering, where do I go from here? And it was also around this time in 1979 that I was exposed to the first major, like, newsworthy world event in my life that I was made aware of. And that was called the Iranian hostage crisis, where uh, the revolution took place in Iran, where the people overthrew the Shah, who I found out later was put into power by the CIA and not by the Iranian people. It's one of the reasons they experienced the revolution. And they instituted the Islamic government that they presently have under the Ayatollah. The first one was Ayatollah Khomeini. And in the midst of that revolution, the American consulate was attacked, and I think it was 52 Americans were taken hostage. And this was a really big deal. I mean, it was all over the news, and everybody was up in arms about it. And it looked like we were about to go to war with Iran. And, me being 9 years old and not understanding hardly any of this, it shook me up quite a bit. And it added to this ongoing realization that the world is not what I was assuming it is. You know, being raised in a church environment, every Sunday we recited the Lord's Prayer that talked about thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. And suddenly I'm seeing that that's not how it is. I mean, that's an ideal, but that's not how it is now. And really, my heart was being drawn to want to, cooperate with God as far as his kingdom coming and his will being done on earth as it is in heaven. Of course, I had no idea what that involved, what that entailed, but it occurred to me that if I knew basically when history began, like when were the first humans occupying this planet, then I could reason from cause to effect through the study of history to come to an understanding of the reason of why the world is now, which in turn would put me potentially in a position to be a solution to what is going on in the world. So that's where my mind was in third grade. And that's why I asked my teacher this question about the first humans. And that's why I was so perplexed when she told me basically that she didn't know. But instead of just admitting I have no idea, she defers me to something called college, where I should study to be an anthropologist. And like I said, in my third grade mind, 9 years old, that just didn't click. And so uh, I want to take a brief moment here to welcome Mr. Hexagon Greenhorn. Hex family, good to see you again, Mr. Hexagon Greenhorn. Um, I have been, I noticed you just popped up in chat, so I don't know how long you've been here, but basically I've been sharing on stream about some of my experience growing up and the fact that my streams on Saturdays are not going to be of the same nature as they are during the week because today is the Sabbath day. And because of just who I am in my experience of life, the nature of my streams on Saturday are not going to include things like crypto and things that pertain to this world. The things I talk about on Sabbath pertain to things that involve the Sabbath and the kingdom of God. And so I've been sharing with people my experience of how I came to this place. And I also, since he came up, Andre, Pulse Bitcoin Miner. Hello, Tim. Hello, Andre. Thank you for stopping in again. It was good to see you the other day. And I'm thankful that you're here. As I was just telling Hexagon Greenhorn, my streams on Saturday are different than they are during the week because today is the Sabbath day. And because of that and how I relate to the Sabbath, that affects the subject matter that I talk about. And I was sharing with everyone how I got to this place. And basically, it started when I was a child, and it really just unfolded over the course of my life. And I was talking about how this picked up significantly when I was in third grade, based on a conversation I had with my teacher. And of course, being a child and growing up in the 1980s, the 80s were a great time to grow up because a lot of the electronic devices that we use today first started to become available to consumers in the 1980s. Personal computers, for example. The first personal computer was actually available in 1975. It was called the Altair 8800. But that was mainly, I mean, it was publicly available, but only nerds actually went and bought them. Computers didn't actually start to become a mainstream thing until the mid 1980s. And even then, it was mostly for nerdy kids like me that found them interesting. Most people only used them because their places of employment pretty much forced them to. But people didn't like them very much, but I did. But anyway, because of all of these electronic things that became available to consumers in the 1980s, video games being a big thing, these things started to become a priority in my life at that time. So I wasn't as focused on spiritual things as I was growing into and had this awakening experience in third grade. It's kind of like that momentum that was just starting to sprout within me suddenly got distracted by just amusements and entertainments. And but in sixth grade, I had another one of these awakening experiences when our elementary school had what is called an in-service day. basically the teachers meet with the parents and they just have a conversation about the future of their children, because after sixth grade you move on to junior high school, and the curriculum changes, the environment changes, and it's just you know the teachers meet with the parents to help them get their kids prepared for this. So what our elementary school did for this day is they rented the local roller skating rink. And so all of us kids, we had the roller rink to ourselves. And it was awesome. It was such a fun day. And while I was skating with one of my best friends, um, we were just talking about life and stuff. And this song was playing. And there was a line in this song that said, so our graduations hang on the wall, but they never really helped us at all, for they never taught us what was real. And it's like I wasn't even paying attention to the song really, but that statement in the song went into me and created another one of these awakening experiences within me that told me that the desire of my childhood to want to know the truth about life was not going to be found through the educational system. And it was like in that moment, it's like I responded in agreement to that revealing. And as a result, it was like I felt like I was done with school at that moment. Like there was no point in moving on. It was like I had a higher calling to pursue, even though I didn't know what that was at that time. So I pretty much forgot about school for, that whole summer. It wasn't until it was about 2 weeks before it was time to go to junior high school that my mom one day was like, "Hey, why don't we take a walk across town to see how long it takes you to get to school?" And I'm like, "What school?" She was like, "The junior high school that you're going to in 2 weeks." I'm like, "What?" Uh, because I got a crash course in something called compulsory education at that time. When I was a child and my parents took me to nursery school and elementary school, you know, I just accepted that this was part of life. By the time I got to the end of elementary school, and because of my hearing this song and the effect that had on me and my response to it, in my mind, I was free. I didn't have to go to junior high school if I didn't want to. But now all of a sudden I'm being confronted with the fact that no, you got to go, or we're going to, we're going to have to answer to the state, and we don't want to have to do that. So I ended up having to go to junior high school, and that was a real shock to my system because I wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't prepared for the change that brought on to me, because where I lived, it's like junior high school was like an accumulation of not only my elementary school, but at least two other elementary schools and a couple of Catholic schools uh, for kids that did not continue with a parochial education. So it's like the student body suddenly just swelled to, 4 or 5 times bigger than what I was used to. And, in a way that was cool because my friend base expanded, but at the same time, the environment was a lot more competitive. And I really felt the weight of that because I wasn't really that competitive of a person. I never really took that much of an interest in playing sports and, engaging in activities that fostered competition. I was more into playing, pinball and video games and, you know, not even playing against my friends, but just playing game one player games. So, I remember, for example, like in 8th grade, the junior high school, that was the first year that we had a soccer team. And I signed up for soccer. And um, just getting to a place where I could make the team and actually acquire a position on the team was a lot of work. And even though I made the team, I hardly ever got to play. And if I did, it was like for the last 10 minutes of the game when it didn't matter, whether I sucked or not. Anyway, we were going to lose or whatever. So, and I remember one time, like it was like one of our last home games of the season. I asked the coach, would it be possible that I can play, in a more active position for a longer period of time, just this one time, because this was going to be the only time that both of my parents would be available to watch me play. And he said, yeah, we can do that. And as it turned out, he reneged on his word because we were too close to winning and he didn't want to put me in there and have me screw up and, cost us the game. And really, that broke my heart because I felt betrayed. And, whatever interest I was starting to take in school that was starting to be renewed within me was suddenly gone. It's like I suddenly hated school at that point. And it wasn't long after that I got turned on to smoking cigarettes, and then a year later, I got turned on to smoking pot, and suddenly I was more interested in rock music and stuff like that as a way of coping with really just the rejection that I felt from someone that I looked up to, someone that I was trying my hardest to gain their trust and confidence from. So, my whole attitude towards school shifted at that point. And then by the time I got into junior high school, I was just so disconnected. I didn't care. I only did the bare minimum to get by just so I can graduate because I can tell from the behaviors of my younger brothers that I was probably going to be the only child in our family that would graduate from high school. And unfortunately, it turned out that I was right. So that was basically my experience in school. And after graduating from high school, uh, I was working full time by this time. And I had become friends with some people at my place of employment who were older than me, who had a house in my town that they were renting, that they had a spare room. They actually had two spare rooms that they were willing to let me rent one of these rooms. And so I was able to move out of my parents' house after I graduated from high school, which I did. I was very looking forward to doing very much so. And even though I got along with my parents fairly well, I grew up in a home with a lot of stress and a lot of tension, and it weighing effect on me, and I needed to get out from under all of that pressure. So that's why I moved out, like, within a few weeks of graduating. And, yeah, I'd still visit from time to time. I only lived a few blocks away. I could walk back home in 5 minutes if I wanted to. And my parents still let me do my laundry at their house, which helped. And, but it was really awesome, uh, having my own space at this young of an age, and, being able to support myself and all that. So, um, over time, I'd say about a year and a half later, um, the kid that I was chatting with, my friend that I was skating with when I heard that song that caused that awakening in me, that same kid was having uh, earlier in life, he was having some family difficulties that I helped him get through. I basically allowed him to pitch a tent in my parents' backyard so he could basically run away from home for a while without like getting himself harmed, because we lived in the same neighborhood. But anyway, later in life, um, we had parted ways a little bit because in my town, after junior high school, you had the option of moving on to the high school if you were pursuing academics. But if you were pursuing a trade like mechanics or electrical engineering or something, you can go to what was called the tech school in my town, and you can go there for high school. And my friend did that. I went to the regular high school, and so we kind of lost touch for a while. But after we both graduated, um, we reconnected. And at this time, he had a girlfriend that he intended on marrying, and his family was they bought a house in another county, and they were about to move. And he knew that, if he moved with his family, he would end up, breaking up with this girl that he was in love with and he wanted to marry. So I made arrangements with my roommates to let my friend share this other room in this house. And so now we live together. And even though we were friends, we started to realize that we also had our differences. Um, and these things started to become evident over time. And fortunately, they weren't really that big of a deal. But at the same time, we started to get to know each other in a way that we really never talked about before. And that is the fact that this kid in elementary school, um, he didn't, he wasn't there from the beginning. He arrived in like third grade. So um, I noticed that like when we would have like cultural events like a Christmas party or a Halloween party or Thanksgiving, thing in class or whatever, he wouldn't participate in that. Like he wouldn't make Christmas cards or he wouldn't make Halloween decorations or anything like that. He would just sit there and just pretend that nothing was going on. And I always wondered, why did he do that? And I just assumed that it was because he was Jewish. And I never really asked him because I didn't want to pry into his personal life. No one else ever asked him either. It was really weird. It's like everybody just avoided him. Like nobody made fun of him or asked him or like trolled him in any way. It was just what it was. So I never really asked him about that until we were roommates. Turns out he told me that the reason he did that is because his family were what is known as Jehovah's Witnesses. And I had heard that word before, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what that meant. And he explained it to me in rather generic terms, but he didn't really like go into any kind of detail. On a side note, I would find out later that Richard Hart was raised as a Jehovah's Witness also, because he mentioned that on stream one time. Richard Hart was also born in Pennsylvania, like me and my roommate that I'm talking about also. So that's just another little factoidal connection there. But anyway, um, so this kid, uh, over time, he recommended that I read the Bible because, in his opinion, he thought that I would get it. Well, as I shared earlier, I had already read part of it when I was 8 years old and I didn't get it. And I pretty much packed it away with some other belongings, and it was in my parents' basement for however long, many years, whatever. And so he ended up giving me his personal copy that his parents gave him because he happened to have it with him when he moved into this house. And I accepted it from him. I put it on my bookshelf, but I didn't read it right away. I actually started to become somewhat career minded uh, since moving out on my own. And I actually was looking at wanting to get involved in the music industry somehow. I was like, I read a book on songwriting and I bought a book uh, called This Business of Music that was written by two lawyers explaining the ins and outs of the music industry as far as how record deals are signed, how what record labels are, how royalties work and recording contracts. I mean, practically everything from A to Z as far as the music business was concerned was covered in this textbook. So these were the kinds of books that I was into at this time in my life. And so I wasn't really interested in reading the Bible, even though I was willing to accept this one as a gift from my roommate. Um, it wasn't until uh, I took an interest uh, in a girl that I worked with that life started to bring me to a position where I needed to know um, some answers about human nature and relationships and behaviors and just things of that nature. And because of my upbringing, uh, basically, I came to a place where I had to make a choice whether I was going to relate to the Bible as a work of fiction or nonfiction, is what it came down to. But I kept delaying that because I had other things that were appeared to me to be a bigger priority. Um, but now I was coming to a place in life where this was becoming a priority. But I kept putting it off. And by putting it off, I was putting myself in a position where I was basically just bringing myself a lot of hardship and a lot of heartache. And in the midst of all that, um, two major things happened. First of all, this girl went to college and she was basically out of my life. And she was 4 years younger than me. So when I first met her, she was in her senior year of high school. And the thought of her going to college scared the living daylights out of me, because usually it's when girls go to college that they meet the guy they want to marry. So I kind of went into survival mode at that moment. And I wrote this girl a letter telling her what I was hoping our future would look like together. And she called me from college, her college dorm, and she basically told me, "You've got to be kidding me. You actually think I'm going to seriously consider sharing my life with a guy that lives from paycheck to paycheck?" And I was devastated because you could say I was in love with this girl, even though, based on my knowledge of what love is now, I really wasn't. It was just my instincts were telling me that I was in love with this girl. I didn't know love from anything at that time in my life. I was just an idiot, a stoned idiot. Um, so, uh, the other thing that happened at this time in my life was somebody that I had worked for previously. Him and his wife bought a house in Chandler, Arizona, and they had moved to that house about a year prior to this time, when the husband called me and he said, "Hey, Kira and I have been talking, and we both know that you're a responsible guy. You're good with money. Um, so we thought we'd make you an offer. We have a guest room in our house. And if you've ever considered moving out of your hometown there in Pennsylvania and want to live somewhere else, our home's open to you. You can just stay here uh, until, you find a job and a place to live, and, it's cool." And I was just like, "I'm packing now." I mean, that was like an answer to an unspoken prayer. I mean, literally, it's like the doctor knew exactly what I needed. So, I literally got off the phone with them, and I literally just started making a list of what I'm going to take with me, what I'm going to sell, what I'm going to store at my parents' house, and whatever else is left over, I'll either give it away or throw it away. And I sold all of my computer equipment, all my geek stuff. I sold it all. And I literally, the first time in my life I ever got on a commercial jet was to buy a one-way ticket from Philadelphia to Phoenix, Arizona. And I actually grew up in a town in Pennsylvania called Phoenixville. Literally, you can look it up online. Phoenixville. That's where I'm from. And I moved from Phoenixville to Phoenix, Arizona. And it was interesting. That summer of 1992, I kept telling people, "Yeah, I'm moving to Arizona." And nobody believed me. They thought, "You're crazy. You're not just going to just drop everything and just get up and move." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm packing now. I'm moving to Arizona." And I talked about it every day for weeks at a time. And I remember this girl that I was supposedly in love with. She, on her one summer break, she was back at work where I was working, and she's like, "What are you going to do when you go to Arizona?" And I actually said this. I said, "I have no idea. Maybe I'll write the third testament to the Bible. I don't know. I don't care. I'm just getting out of here." And she just looked at me shocked, because she was Catholic. And knowing what I know now about the history of the Roman Catholic Church, I can understand why she was shocked when I told her that I would say something as audacious as saying I was going to write the third testament of the Bible. I was stoned. I wasn't thinking in my right mind. It just came out. And but anyway, so yeah, On August 22nd, 1992, I got on an airplane with 2 suitcases, a backpack, a boombox, and a box of cassette tapes. You know, I had like 300 cassette tapes at this time, and I grabbed like my favorite 30 because I had this double-sided case, carrying case for cassette tapes. And you could fit, no, actually it was 60. You could fit 30 in each side, and it was like a little suitcase. And yeah, and I had whatever money I had, and I had already bought a plane ticket, and got on there, and it was like even up to the last minute, there were like people in my family because like half my family showed up to see me off. Because at this time, you know, it wasn't just passengers that can go all the way up to the gate. Anybody, the gates were publicly accessible because this was before 9/11. Before 9/11, it's like the airports were just like a public park. Like anybody can go anywhere. There was no TSA, there were no restrictions. So it's like when I went to get on this airplane, it's like my grandparents were there, my parents were there, when my best friend was there, my roommates were there. It was like 15, 20 people, you know, seeing me get on an airplane. And in my mind, it was no big deal. It was like, you know, if I were just leaving to go to college, everybody would be happy for me. But everybody was like afraid that I was like going on some kind of suicide mission, like I was going to go kill myself. And no, it turned out to be the best experience of my entire life. Um, Being able to move out of your hometown is awesome when you're young. And I remember before I moved, the last year or two before I moved, I had wrecked my car. So I had to rely on public transportation the last year I lived in Pennsylvania before I moved out, unless one of my roommates would let me borrow their car on occasion. But as far as like getting back and forth to work, I had to take a bus. Unless somebody that I worked with was willing to drop me off or pick me up or whatever. And sometimes, you know, we would do that because we would go out for drinks or whatever. And there was this lady that knew my mom who offered to take me home from work one night. We worked together. And I remember I was whining to her about, you know, how much my life sucked at this time. And she was pretty disgusted with what I was saying. And she just looked at me disgusted. And she's like, you know what you need? And I just copped an attitude. I'm like, no, what? She's like, you need to get the hell out of this town. She's like, you've been living here way too long. She's like, there's a whole world outside of Phoenixville that you have not seen. And you really need to go see it because your mind is going. And just get out of here. She's like, just pack up a backpack and just go. Just walk. Go away. Hitchhike. Whatever. Don't worry about it. Let life support you. You're so rigid. You're such a control freak, and you're just so. The word rigid was the word that she used. She's like, you need to loosen up. You need to get out of here. And I agreed with her. I'm like, yeah, I'm not really happy being the person that I am. I'm miserable. And it's exactly what I needed. And because of the sense of relief, I mean, you know, I remember talking to the travel agent because back in this time, you needed to talk to a travel agent to buy a plane ticket. This was before the internet. This was before Expedia. You didn't just go online and buy an airplane ticket. It involved a middleman. You had to go to a travel agency, or you had to go to an office that was run by the airlines. And there was a travel agent in my hometown. So I went and talked to her about what was going on with me and what I was doing. And she was like, I'm going to hook you up. She's like, there's a direct flight from Philadelphia to Denver. And she's like, if you sit in this seat and you take this flight at this time of the day, she's like, this is the perfect flight for the perfect view of the mountains at sunset when you land in Denver. She's like, I'm going to make this extra special for you because of, you know, your situation. I'm like, oh, cool. So she hooked me up with this super awesome ticket. And then I got the second flight from Denver down to Sky Harbor in Phoenix. And then my friends picked me up there and took me to their house in Chandler, which is actually south of Phoenix, if you're familiar with the Phoenix metro area. And when I got out of their car, because when we drove from the airport to their house, it was pretty much city. You know, it didn't really seem that much different, other than the fact that after we got off the freeway, the street signs in Tempe are like billboards, like they're these gigantic lit up screens as far as your major cross streets are concerned, which are every mile. If you look at a map of Phoenix, the whole Phoenix metro area, it looks like a giant checkerboard because the Canadians who designed that city were smart. They made it so you have these cross streets that are every mile. And once you're familiar with those cross streets, it's practically impossible to get lost in that city. It's beautiful. It's like the best city a person who's young and not acquainted with city living could go to. And but when we arrived at their house, the first thing I did is I dropped all my stuff and I went out and I took a walk around the neighborhood. And it was like I went to another planet compared to what I grew up around. Because the town of Phoenixville in Pennsylvania developed around a steel mill that my dad worked at as a security guard when I was born. And when I was like 7 years old, he lost his job because the plant began the process of shutting down. And eventually everybody lost their job. But my dad was, you know, lost his job at the steel mill. And the closing of the steel mill had a real depressing and dampening effect on the entire town the whole time I grew up in that town, which kind of impacted on how I viewed the world as a young person. And it wasn't until after the turn of the millennium that people started reinvesting a lot of money in the downtown area because a lot of the original buildings, because they were built really good, they've lasted through the test of time. So people started dumping a lot of money back into town. And, you know, I've been back there several times since then, and it's really cool to see some revitalization in the town because that wasn't the state of the town when I grew up in it. I was growing up when it was just going down a toilet. So moving to Arizona was a big culture shock to me in a really good way. I mean, you know, I get out, I'm walking around this neighborhood. First thing I notice is you could see stars because there wasn't that much light pollution. And next thing I notice, everybody had a yard and like everybody had a garage and everybody like had space between their houses. Where I grew up, the houses, most of the houses are duplexes where you're literally like your house is attached to somebody else's house. And you know, a garage was a luxury in my hometown. Most people had to park on the street. And that was really fun when it snowed because you had to fight over parking spaces, unless you were willing to park, you know, several blocks away from your house. And there were no abandoned buildings. There's no graffiti. There's no broken glass in the streets. You know, there's none of the stuff that characterized, you know, certain parts of Southeast Pennsylvania. And Phoenixville is actually a relatively clean town. I mean, if you've ever been to like Philadelphia, some parts of Philadelphia, when I grew up in that area, my dad, after losing his job at the steel mill, he worked for a dairy. And at first he did home delivery and then he got a commercial route that took him into Philadelphia and other places in New Jersey, the Campbell Soup Factory in Camden. I've been there before it got demolished. Man, I never eat Campbell soup again after that. I mean, the smell of that place smelled like a corpse, man. It was horrible. Oh man. Um, but anyway, uh going to Arizona was just, it did something for me that just caused me to appreciate life. It's like it was a mind expanding experience. And, you know, a result of that that came out of me is my way of saying thank you to God or whoever was responsible for bringing all this together was I read the Bible in its entirety from beginning to end. And that has had an ongoing effect on how I relate to life, how I relate to people, how I respond to things. And that's part of why uh, my streams on Saturday are going to revolve around biblical issues, the Sabbath day, because today's the Sabbath day, because the effect I experienced is something that I would just love for other people to experience. Because I don't want to just say, trust me, bro. But I feel like I'm out of words at this point. Um, but literally, this is why the subject matter will be what it will be on this day from here on out. Because as I read in this verse earlier, um, there is a blessing of right that is described as riding upon the high places of the earth and being fed with the heritage of Jacob. I talked about last week what that looks like in my own personal life, the fulfillment of that in my own personal life. And I would love to see these same blessings fulfilled in other individuals' personal lives in whatever way the Lord fulfills that in people's lives. So, um, this is uh, where I'm at. And I just want to say a big thank you to Hex Key. He says, hey, keep it going. Well, I've spoken this long because I saw that chat earlier, and it really, it only takes one person for me to keep it going. And uh, I have kept it going to this point because of that. I do want to stop at this point just because the fact is, after I read the Bible, I wanted to start going back to church again on my own recognizance. And I started doing that in January of 1993. And that doing that opened up a lot of subject matter to me. And I don't want to get into that now because it's a whole catalog of things that are all interconnected. And I'd rather just address all of them as one picture rather than unpackaging part of it now, knowing that I don't want to go through the entire picture now. So I just want to save all of it till next Saturday. So this is as far as I'm going to go with my personal experience on this stream at this time. But at the same time, Hudat just popped in and says, hey, brother, missed you yesterday. Yeah. I did not stream yesterday. I said earlier in this stream why I didn't, but I will just give you a brief recap. The fact is, um, yesterday, uh, I was working on my property, and the guy that was driving the dump truck delivering the fill material for the foundation, when he was done with dumping the last load, he gets out of his truck and he asks me, "Hey, what do you do for money? Because I've noticed you're working here or not working for somebody else." And I said, "Between that and all that stuff on your car, I figured you know something about the internet." And we got into this conversation about crypto. And he's very, very, very interested. As a matter of fact, he shook my hand like 5 times during our conversation yesterday. So between that, the fact that when I came home to stream, uh, Crypto Cabana was already online, so I didn't want to be online while he was. And then I started processing some of the things that I was talking about on Thursday regarding a conversation I had with my aunt regarding my aunt's sister, which is my mother. And I was just processing that in my mind, and it caused me to uh, undergo some personal introspection that was a pretty big priority for me to resolve. And by the time that was all done and I ate dinner, uh, the Friday night hangout was about to launch within the next hour. So I just didn't stream yesterday. I felt like I needed some alone time to deal with some family, personal things. And so I explained that in a little more detail earlier in this stream. But so, yeah, yesterday I took a day off, but I feel like I made up for it quite a bit today. And so uh, I feel like I've said everything uh, that I feel is necessary to say regarding me and what I have to say today. Um, if nobody else has anything, that they want to put in the chat to say to keep, this stream going, I'm probably just going to go ahead and call it. Uh, I feel like I accomplished a lot by being able to say what I said today. And I'm really, really appreciative of you guys sticking around to hear what I have to say. Um, let's see who that says. Awesome. My wonders on time in the market and not timing the market. However, I was wondering if there is a market crash, how much should we anticipate with dry powder? I really don't have a concise answer to that. Um, because the way I set up like my staking ladder, um, I didn't consider that. I set up my staking ladder, and if I don't have enough money coming in, I'm just going to go back to work and make more. That's and then stake it and just I don't I don't even think about timing the market. I just don't. It's not an issue with me. Um, you know, like I said, if my time in the market isn't sufficient, then I will spend more time in the market until it is. And you know, that's the whole focus of what I talk about during the 6 days is um, you know, the incentives for using our time during the week in the market to get that desired result so that we don't have to focus on timing the market. And then because we don't have to time the market, we're free to enjoy the blessings that are open to us when we um, when we are occupying the Sabbath day. So that's part of why I'm highlighting the fact that it is the Sabbath day, so that we can receive those rewards, the real rewards of life, the real blessings of life, because those blessings will rise us above the anxiety that people experience when they try to time markets. That's, Richard talked about that. That's why Hex was invented. So we don't have to be preoccupied with trying to time the market. And, that's one of the reasons I'm such a hardcore Hexican. And, and I don't care if people think that I'm a fake because I do hold other coins. My relationship to Hex has never changed, and it never will, even though I've expanded my territory slightly. So, yeah, this has just this whole weekend is just being so awesome so far, between what unfolded Friday, what's happening today, the fact that I've been able to stream today and stream as long as I have, and what prospectively could happen tomorrow. We have so much to be thankful for in this life. This is one of the reasons that I don't watch television anymore. So much of what is produced as content on the mainstream media is geared to create tension, to create anxiety, to create stress, to create drama. It's like that feeds into our natural instincts, and that it's almost like the negative energy that generates serves as gasoline for the engine that powers the powers that be. It's almost as if the power structures of the world use us as a source of energy to make their system work, because their system is designed to benefit those who have the right relationship to that system. And if you want to have that right relationship to that system, you have to sacrifice a certain part of yourself, your dignity, your character, to receive those benefits. That's why there are so many conspiracy theories surrounding the elites and the insiders and all this stuff. And tomorrow's stream, the book review I'm going to do on tomorrow's stream, is going to really hit on this relatively hard. So, yeah, like Hudat says, yes, we do. Fear is a mind killer. Love is the answer. It really is. And, one of my favorite Bible verses says, "For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and love and of a sound mind." And when you have a society of people who have a sound mind, it makes the power structures of this world obsolete. It's like the more insane people are, the more police we have to keep all the crazies in check. The more people have a sound mind, the less police officers we need, because people know how to just get along. They know how to resolve their conflicts without having to call the cops. They know how to just respect one another's space and respect one another's property. so that we don't need as many lawyers. We don't need as many police officers. We don't need, when people learn to take care of one another, we don't need as many people getting EBT cards. We don't need healthcare systems. We don't need the things that people are begging the government for. And, these are the things that define a successful society. And this is why I want to stream, because I want to be instrumental in manifesting this successful society. It's like I spent my entire life learning what it is. And half the time I didn't even know that's what I was learning. I thought I was just satisfying my own curiosity. And, but as I just got older and just matured, it's like it started to realize, no, there's a bigger picture that we are all pieces of. And when you see the whole picture, when you see all the pieces in place, the picture's beautiful. And again, all I can say is trust me, bro. Trust me, bro. It's funny when I read people make reference to that statement on Twitter. I have to remember, half the people who tweet are like 20 years younger than me. It's like, I have to remember half the time when I'm talking to people, I'm talking to people who were not alive before the internet. They've never heard of cable TV. To them, a Commodore 64 is something you go see in a museum. Oh, man. Life is great. But, yeah. Who that's like, I feel you, brah. I'm glad somebody does. Oh, wow. I'm so used to being in environments where I'm the young guy. I mean, especially like if you go to churches and stuff, most of the people there are like in their 80s, 90s. People in their 50s are like the young people. So, and it's been that way for much of my life. It's like every circle I'm a part of, I'm always the young guy. So it's like, I have to remind myself, yeah, most of the people on this planet are young enough to be my kids. It's like that makes some people feel old. It doesn't necessarily make me feel old. It's just a fact that I have to be reminded of from time to time. The fact that I've never been married and I don't have any kids kind of is one of the reasons I have to remind myself. Usually, if you're married and you have kids, you automatically have a reminder every day in your face telling you you're getting older, dude. So, anyway, yeah, today was an awesome day. You guys helped make it much better than I thought it would be. When I first clicked go live, I was actually feeling kind of tired and wondering, if I was going to even have a reason to be on here more than a half hour. And I love having a reason to be on here longer than that. So, but I am going to get going for now. I do appreciate everybody stopping by, and I'll probably go on in the morning tomorrow instead of waiting until later in the day. I do want to get back into the swing of streaming in the morning. That way, like I said before, I'm free to stream all day if I want to. And if I don't, I have enough of the day left over to, go work on my property or do something else. So, anyway, thank you again, everybody, for being here. And next Saturday, I will pick up with life and the things that happened to bring me to where I am now, why I am as I am, and why I do as I do, and all of that. So, thank you everybody for again, again, and again for being here today. And I will see you all tomorrow morning. All right. Bye.